Weirdest fight that we have straight up this weekend. Our first of 3 heavyweight fights. These guys unranked. We have the Bulldozer Tanner Boser representing our glorious nation of Canada, taking on Sweden's Ilir Latifi. He is the Sledgehammer, but he hasn't been hammering anything lately. He's 0-3 in his last 3, 2-3 in his last 5. We're going to have fun with it. And his last win was a submission win over Ovince St. Preux about 3 years ago. Since then, losing to Corey Anderson, Volkan Oezdemir, Derek Lewis. Now I got to talk about that Derek Lewis fight because, listen, Ilir Latifi thinks it's a robbery. So I went through and I watched it again. Yeah, Ilir, you won the second round. For sure, Ilir Latifi won the second round. I went on MMA decisions. 12 of the members had it 29-28 Lewis. 1 had it 29-28 Latifi. That's where it's weird. Because they bring him up to heavyweight for Ilir Latifi. I'm late in my career. I'm almost 38 years old. My first pro fight was against Blagoy Ivanov, and the ring collapsed. And now we're here. So they made him fight future title challenger Derek Lewis. 2-time title challenger. And you lose 29-28. So you went to the top to come in. Now you're going to fight unranked Tanner Boser. And for Tanner Boser, to his credit, didn't look great against Andrei Arlovski. It was a good fight. And originally I had a 29-28 Boser. And on a second and third rewatch, I did score it for Arlovski. But albeit a close fight. He finishes Rafael Pessoa. He finishes Felipe Lins. He loses to Cyril Gane. He beats Daniel Spitz. Now, Daddy Longleg Spitz, we don't really hear about him all that often in the UFC. Losing to Cyril Gane in a back-and-forth fight. It was a good fight. Back-and-forth striking battle. You learn a little bit about both fighters. You beat Lins. You beat Pessoa, who's, you saw it knocking down that door.
That's true.
And then you lose to Arlovski in a fight where Boser landed more, but Arlovski landed the more, I would say, qualitative shots rather than quantitative. So you have Boser, the striker. You have Latifi, the takedown machine. It's an interesting stylistic matchup, but ultimately it's an odd fight.
I can tell you everything both of these fighters do. I know both guys' games very well. I have no idea what this fight's going to look like or what's going to happen in this fight. Because with Ilir Latifi, look back at that Ovince St. Preux fight. He drops him with an overhand left and then chokes him unconscious with a guillotine. If you can do that to Ovince St. Preux, you must be all right at MMA, right? Right? Because Ilir Latifi, I don't know if he's a good fighter disguised as an awful fighter or a really bad fighter who's just lied his way to the top, because I don't really know how Ilir Latifi is going to beat top level heavyweights, and it really just comes down to his size and build at this weight division. I don't know how he's going to guillotine a lot of these guys in the weight division purely based on the size and the whole logistics of it, because my problem is Ilir Latifi's going to have a really hard time getting guys to bring their heads down, because A, no one's taking Ilir Latifi down at heavyweight. Most guys are going to try to, and most guys are big enough that they're just going to want to keep the fight at range and try to out-volume strike him. The flip side of that is, though, if you look at some of Ilir Latifi down at light heavyweight, he has really good power, he has the good submission ability. I just don't know if he's going to be able to crack Tanner Boser with a big enough shot to get him down to the mat to really use any of his grappling, because with Tanner Boser, he's a frustrating fighter. Let's just call it what it is. Because I do think Tanner Boser is a top 15 caliber heavyweight, but I don't know if he ever will get into the top 15 of the heavyweight division. Because he's a weird fighter, because you talk about it. He's a good striker, but he has, I don't want to say no power, but he's not a powerful striker for the division, and it's weird because normally in heavyweight, everybody just has power because it's kind of a built-in attribute for the division. With Boser, he reminds me kind of a Michael Bisping striker where he's not throwing his punches to knock you out. If he does knock you out with a straight right or with an accumulation of shots, that's great, but Tanner Boser's not walking into the cage looking for the knockout. He realizes that, yes, I will need 2, 3, 4, maybe even 5 punch combinations to really land on my opponents. My issue is that at heavyweight, you're going to have to stand in the pocket with a lot of these guys. And if Tanner Boser's going to be standing in the pocket, trying to land with his volume, I don't look at Boser as, he's so fleet of foot that he can really dart in, land his 2 shots, and jump out. I think he might be able to against Ilir Latifi, don't get me wrong. I just think when he does end up fighting the guys, look at the top of this card, like a Walt Harris, like a Jairzinho Rozenstruik. Hell, even if he fights, let's say, a Stipe Miocic one day. Like, these are guys who have really good technical boxing on the inside. They have power for when you do try to jump in, and even when you do try to back out of these exchanges, they're going to follow you with combinations. I like the components of Tanner Boser's game. It just, there's always something in his fights that frustrates me. And for that reason, listen, I think Tanner Boser should be Ilir Latifi. I think Ilir Latifi at heavyweight is one of the most out-of-position athletes in the UFC. I just think Tanner Boser, by being a little bit bigger and by having better cardio, is going to win this fight.
I mean, for Ilir Latifi coming in at heavyweight, it's almost like Willians Astudillo coming into pitch. And hey, you're going to strike out Anthony Rizzo, and then you're going to give up home runs to Yermin Mercedes when his manager doesn't really like it. But when I look at this, Latifi in his last fight weighed 246.5 pounds. Boser consistently weighs, in the last time, 232.5. Latifi's the bigger fighter in terms of weight, which is weird and it lends credence to his grappling. If you look at it for Boser, 100% takedown defense in the UFC, hashtag stats matter, but not really, because it was 0 of 1 for Pizzoa and 0 of 1 for Gon. And yeah, the Gon one holds a little bit of water, but at the same time, go back and watch the fight. It's a striking matchup. I mean, didn't need to take him down.
Last thing on Ilir Latifi, too, because you brought up the Derek Lewis performance. Yes, he can take a little bit of confidence out of just losing a 29-28 decision to Derek Lewis, but here's the thing. That's a fight that nothing happened in. Like, not a lot really happened in that fight. It was just two guys who, yeah, Derek Lewis landed a little bit more in that first and third round, but it's not like Ilir Latifi really separated himself in any of the rounds. Like, that was an extremely close fight because neither guy really did a lot. So, yes, Ilir Latifi, it's not like he got knocked out, but he didn't do anything in that fight that really showed me that, wow, Ilir Latifi showed me something at the heavyweight division that he wasn't showing me at the light heavyweight division. So at the end of the day, do I think Tanner Boser can outstrike Ilir Latifi for 15 minutes? Yeah, I do. I think Latifi's going to have a hard time getting the takedown on Boser, and I think he's going to have a really hard time trying to strike the much bigger and honestly the much faster fighter in Boser, and for all those reasons, I do think Boser is going to be able to walk himself to a unanimous decision victory.
Having a look at the odds for this one, Boser open to minus 180 favorite. He's a minus 202 at this point. For Latifi, open to plus 155. He's at a plus 164. And if we have a look at the total Tapology votes, 1,406 of them, 70% Boser, 50% by decision. You got 45% by knockout. For the 30% that have Latifi, 65% by decision. And like you said from the outset, Matt, this is one of those fights, one of two things is going to happen. And there's a lot of those ones on this card. But for Ilir Latifi, he's at Extreme Couture. I know he's an All-Stars guy, but he spent some time at Extreme Couture getting ready for this one from the IGs. Now, I haven't seen the pictures, but there's one guy I can think of at 205 and 265 that you can get a little bit of a sense for a guy like Boser. Max Grecian is the name that comes to mind for me. Go ahead.
For me, Ilir Latifi's losing streak really did kind of start when you look at the downfall of the All-Stars gym. Because, here, you have to remember who he was training with when he kind of went on his streak. He had Alexander Gustafsson, and Phil Davis was at All-Stars too, because you have to remember, he was training at Alliance, but also Alliance is a sister gym with All-Stars. So we had two of the better light heavyweights out there. You have a guy who's really good at striking that you practice striking with, and a guy in Phil Davis that you can get constant reps in wrestling in. Those are two of the better 205ers you can have out there for training partners. Ilir Latifi now, Gustafsson's, is he retired? Does he even fight? And Phil Davis is no longer with the gym. I just feel like Ilir Latifi was one of those cases of when that gym was really flourishing and when there was a lot of talent there for him to train with, he had a lot of guys, and it was one of those iron sharpens iron ordeals. Now Latifi doesn't have the same level. Listen, I do think Max Grecian is a really good guy, and physically he does stand up next to Tanner Boser, but Max Grecian isn't like an Alexander Gustafsson and a Phil Davis. So for Latifi, I just don't know what version of him we're going to get at heavyweight, and honestly, I don't think we're going to get that good of a version of him in this fight. I like Tanner Boser quite a bit.
I want to see both of these guys on the scale. I've got Sweden's Latifi as it is right now.
Really?
Because again, closing the distance against a guy like Boser, I think he's going to have all kinds of success. I'm going to go with the underdog. Latifi, Matt has Tanner Boser in this fight, but I absolutely love it because again, really tough to tell what you're going to get out of this fight. You're going to have to tune in to Question Mark Kicks on Saturday, 2 hours before the prelims. There's all kinds of stragglers, and there's lots of DM messages at Fight Night Picks. Where's the show? What's the show you're talking about? Well, now you've heard it here first. Matt's got Boser. I've got Latifi. Big-time heavyweights at the top in the main and the co-main. You're not going to want to miss that, so keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks. As we always say, let's get into it.